So what is function currying? A function curry is a programming concept. Okay, so in this we have to design a specific function which contains series or sequence of function, each accepting one argument at a time, right? So there are I'm going to break down this concept in points. Okay, so first point is it is a functional programming concept. Okay, functional programming concept. Okay, so this is a functional programming concept. We have to design a function which accepts a single argument. Okay, argument allowed, right? A single argument allowed. A function containing a series of functions. Okay, so this is going to come at first, and this is going to come at after this. A function containing a series of functions, a single argument allowed to each function. Okay, that is also a thing we have to remember, right? So if I have to design it, I'm gonna design it in this way, like function. We have a function which have name x and accepts a single argument a. Okay, and it contains functions inside of it, as the second line suggests. Functions contain series of functions. So another function could be like something like this. Okay, it can be c or b. Let's just say we have named the outer function x, so inner function, let's just name it y, and it also accepts a single argument b. Okay, and let's just perform a single operation, right, which is a plus b. So to need to have access to this function which is inside of this function x, as this is going to be a local function, and we cannot have direct access to a local function, we can return this function in that case to have access to it, right? Now we have access to this function also. So how we are going to access this function and provide parameters? Okay, so we can simply type console.log and x, right? Now the value I'm going to type inside of this parenthesis is going to act as a value for the variable a. Okay, and this whole expression, which is x parenthesis and 3 and closing parenthesis, acts as a reference to this function y. Why? Because we are returning this function, and this thing denotes return value. Okay, so as we have reference to this function, and we can execute references, as we know this how programming works, and we can pass value also, right? So the output is going to be 8. Why? Because the return value from the inner function is going to be a plus b. It is going to simply add these two values, which is 8, right? So if I log it, right, let me check. Yes, it is going to be 8. Okay, now next thing is, as the second line says, it is series of functions, right? So we have only two functions. How we can declare third function or any other function after that? We can simply type return over here, right? And another function. As we are returning this function, we don't have to specifically provide name to it. We can also declare a no name function like this. Okay, so this function also returns the value a plus b. However, it depends on us. We provide a value to that function which is 3, and we use it or not, it depends on us. But we have to use this third parenthesis to execute function which is getting returned from inside of the function, right? Which was y. Let's just name it for convenience, for our convenience. Let's just name this one z. Okay, right? So in this way, to access the function z, We have to return this function from the function y. Yes, now we have access to this function. Now this is going to act as a reference to this function as a whole, and we are executing this function's reference, right? We are executing the reference to z over here. So the output is going to be same 8, as we are not using the value that we have passed. Okay, we can use this also, right? We can subtract it, multiply it, divide it, or perform any other operation, whatever we want. Okay, we have access to all these three variables at this point. So if I execute this, output is going to be 5, as we added these two values first, and then I subtracted the value 3, which is equivalent to this one. As simply it is a arithmetic operation. I think you have this much of brain cells left in your head to calculate this, right? Now another concept I am going to explain you is infinite. I think I misspelled it. Infinite curry. Okay, infinite currying is simply, uh, if I had to define it, I would say that we have to define a function. We have to design a function which can accept any number of arguments. Okay, and perform specific operations on them, right? It depends on us whatever we want to do inside of that function. So the way to design it is something like this. Or let's just say I'm going to, let's just not use that one. Let's just use this. Okay, there's no problem. I can just remove the console. C, control C, control C, and comment command. Okay, so now we have this function, and I'm going to comment this out also. Okay, so now we have this function, we have two functions, and remove the inner function for now. Okay, now to make the function not break, like not break its execution, I have to refer either this function or this function, right? In some way. So I'm going to achieve it in this way. Achieve that thing is by calling the function outer function, as we need to have access to inner function also. As if I referred, currently I'm using only two functions. You can use more functions, but for having the reference to the outer function, as we are not uh, having specific uh, reference to that function, we are going to use the outer function, right? Forget that. Uh, so to define so to define infinite currying code, I would simply add any number of amount of values that we pass. Okay, so I'm going to design a function which can accept any number of arguments, and resultant is going to add up those values. Okay, this is how what I'm gonna design in front of you right now. So the way to achieve it is like this. Okay, if the value inside b is not equals to undefined, because this is the condition in, at which is going to break this function. Okay, and return the value of sum a plus b. Okay, if this case doesn't matches, means the value of b is undefined, then we are going to return the simple value of a. Sorry, I wrote something else. I'm just going to write x. In this way, I'm going to call the function, outer function, again and again. Okay, until the condition, which is b not equals to undefined, is met. Okay, so the way I'm going to call this is something like this. First we are going to pass the value for a, then we are going to pass the value for b. And to stop the execution of this function, first understand the syntax. Okay, so here, to stop the execution, I'm going to pass simply nothing inside of this function. So how this is going to work? Take it this way. First we pass the value 12. It is going to pass over here. Okay, then it is going to check the return statement, which is also having a function y, and the 3 is going to be passed to the value b. And we can see here the value 3 is not equals to undefined, which in this case this condition gets set as true, and this function y returns the reference to the outer function and some of the values that we have passed inside of parameter, which is a plus b. In this case 12 and 3, and these both values are going to get added and passed to the function x as the argument for parameter provided here a. So the value for a is going to be 15 over here. Okay, again, as we have called, as we have called this function, it is again going to start its execution. It is again going to go inside of this and see that we have not provided any value over here, right? Any value over this parenthesis is, these two parentheses, opening and closing parentheses, are referring to function y. Okay, as we can see, there is no value inside of this parenthesis, so this value b is going to be undefined, which is not, which in this case this statement is going to this condition which is provided inside of the parenthesis is going to be rendered as false, and value a is going to get returned. And guys, and we can pass the value 5 also here, and this is going to act as a value for b. We can pass any amount of values, as again and again the parenthesis that I'm typing is going to reference to the inner function, and if don't provide any value it is going to be simply returned as the sum of the values which I have passed previously. As of this statement, which is this one, right? This is going to be simply returned, and the value is this 36. You can add this up also, use some of your brain. And in any case, if you don't pass these, in any case, if you don't type these parentheses in simpler way as we have written this function, so as in any case, if you don't provide parentheses, it is simply going to return reference to this function. You can store the reference to that function inside of any value and execute it after that, right? You can do it in this way, something like this: const fx fc. Now if I console log fc and execute it, it is again going to give me value 36, right? The value 36 is still there. If you are not able to comprehend this thing, you should understand closures in JavaScript. Okay, this is for, so sorry, this is all for this video. We'll see you next one. I'll see you next time. This is all for this video. I'll see you next one.